Late on the night of April 19th, 2025, the Supreme Court issued an unanticipated order halting the Trump administration's deportations of Venezuelan migrants. This terse, one-paragraph directive arrived without warning, commanding immediate cessation of all removals and signaling to the executive branch that constitutional bounds cannot be disregarded. The abruptness and decisiveness of this intervention underscore its significance. Few legal developments in modern memory have so rapidly altered the landscape of immigration policy and constitutional law. Since early this year, the Trump administration had sought to reinstate the deportation of Venezuelan migrants detained on U.S. soil, directing their removal to El Salvador. This policy arose amid concern over regional migration pressures, but quickly drew constitutional scrutiny. Critics argued that deporting individuals to a third country without adequate due process safeguards violated both the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of fair procedure and foundational principles of equal protection under the Constitution. Lower courts had already voiced unease with this scheme. Plaintiffs, represented by advocacy groups, contended that forced removal to El Salvador exposed migrants to unsafe conditions and deprived them of hearings to assess eligibility for relief or asylum. These arguments gained traction in federal district courts, which admonished the administration for overstepping legal limits and raised questions about the policy's adherence to statutory requirements, established by Congress and refined through decades of precedent. In response, a coalition of affected migrants swiftly turned to the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. There, under Judge Boasberg's oversight, they sought an emergency injunction to prevent imminent deportations. Judge Boasberg acknowledged the constitutional concerns, but concluded he lacked jurisdiction to enjoin the policy, citing prior Supreme Court instructions that reserved such disputes to other venues. His ruling left petitioners without relief and prompted further legal escalation. Undeterred, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a motion before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which oversees federal cases in Texas and several neighboring states where many Venezuelan migrants were detained. This appeal sought a temporary stay of removals pending full appellate review, underscoring the urgency of preventing what counsel described as unconstitutional deportations. In the pre-dawn hours, the Supreme Court intervened sua sponte. The justice issued a succinct order. The Trump administration is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Notably, the court refused to await the Fifth Circuit's decision, instead imposing an immediate stay. The order further invited the U.S. Solicitor General to submit an expedited brief should the government wish to contest the stay. The court's choice to leapfrog ordinary appellate channels reflects a profound sense of urgency. As Justice Sotomayor cautioned days earlier, failure to enforce constitutional protections warrants direct judicial remedy. By acting swiftly, the justices signaled that due process rights cannot be subjected to delay or docket manipulation when fundamental liberty interests are at stake. Remarkably, 7 of the 9 justices joined the stay. In a rare cross-ideological alignment, Justices Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Chief Justice Roberts joined the court's liberal bloc. Justices Alito and Thomas alone dissented. Both signaled forthcoming opinions, decrying what they described as unwarranted judicial overreach. The 7-2 margin underscores the gravity with which even typically conservative jurists regarded the administration's deportation scheme. By bypassing the Fifth Circuit entirely, the Supreme Court underscored its constitutional role as guardian of individual rights against executive excess. The order reinforces the principle that the executive must abide by constitutional safeguards, a message delivered emphatically in darkness to forestall any further removals. The court's action insists that constitutional obligations transcend policy expediency. Only days before, in the Abrego Garcia case, the Supreme Court exhibited hesitation in ordering the administration to effectuate a district court's mandate for repatriation from El Salvador. The majority there expressed deference to executive prerogatives in foreign affairs, differentiating a release from a return. In contrast, the Venezuelan Migrant Stay demonstrates a decisive willingness to enforce lower court directives when constitutional rights hang in the balance. This ruling raises spectres of a deepening constitutional crisis. If an administration elects to flout Supreme Court orders, first in Abrego Garcia, now in attempted deportations, the separation of powers faces unprecedented strain. Prolonged defiance threatens to erode public confidence in the judiciary and destabilize the rule of law, setting the stage for protracted litigation and political confrontation. Politically, the decision carries weighty implications. President Trump's stature may suffer both domestically and internationally as perceptions of executive impunity and disregard for judicial authority spread. Congressional Republicans, long reluctant to challenge the president, may confront mounting pressure reminiscent of the 1974 Watergate crisis. Then, bipartisan legislative leaders concluded that adherence to constitutional norms necessitated President Nixon's resignation. Today's House and Senate members may face similar imperatives. In the weeks ahead, the Solicitor General is expected to file a response to the Supreme Court stay order, and the Fifth Circuit will proceed with the Azail appeal. Observers anticipate that the full merits of the case will hinge on whether the administration can demonstrate that its policy satisfies constitutional and statutory requirements. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court's swift intervention has already established a crucial precedent. Executive action may be restrained at the highest level when fundamental rights are imperiled. As this saga unfolds, the balance between national sovereignty, immigration control, and constitutional liberty remains in sharp relief. The Supreme Court's surprise ruling affirms the judiciary's vital role in checking executive power. Whether this intervention will compel lasting adherence to constitutional norms or provoke further defiance by the administration remains to be seen. One certainty endures. The legal and political debates set in motion by this decision will reverberate through the remainder of this administration and beyond. Yet the gravity of the court's intervention cannot be overstated. By halting the deportation of Venezuelan migrants before the Fifth Circuit could weigh in, the justices sent a clear signal that constitutional safeguards are not subject to administrative discretion. This rare show of urgency and cross-ideological unity suggests that at least a majority of the court recognizes the mounting peril of unchecked executive overreach. In bypassing traditional procedural timelines, the ruling underscores an evolving willingness within the judiciary to act decisively when foundational principles such as due process are at immediate risk. Still, this moment raises pressing questions about the long-term implications for the separation of powers. If future administrations perceive judicial orders as optional or politically negotiable, the precedent for constitutional enforcement may erode. The court's temporary stay is, in essence, a line in the sand, one that could either solidify judicial authority or invite further resistance. With tensions escalating between the branches of government and the spectre of a constitutional crisis looming, the endurance of democratic institutions now hinges on whether that line is respected. Crossed.